DIY Sweets. Today I'm going to show you how to make a fresh strawberry pie. It's so great for the summertime when you want just a simple, good dessert. Let's get started. We're going to start by making the crust. The crust for our pie is going to be a butter crust. I have all my ingredients for the pie crust here. I have my flour, my ice cold water, a little bit of salt, and my butter. The butter has been chopped into 1/2 inch cubes, and it was stuck in the freezer until I was ready to start making this, so it would be nice and cold. The first thing we want to do is we want to take our flour and our salt, and we want to just mix them together. Make sure that salt is blended in really well. Next thing we want to do is we want to stick our butter in. And because it's very cold and chopped up already, it should blend in quite easily. And I'm just going to go like this and blend the butter in. I want to keep blending this until they're about pea size. I'm finding this bowl is just a little bit too small. Everything's wanting to creep out. So I'm just going to dump it into a bigger bowl. And that way I can really get in and mix it well. And I want to keep blending it until all of the flour and butter is well blended. I want it all to look that pea-sized shaped little morsels. So you keep working on yours and we will be back together once I have all the butter blended into this. You'll notice that this has been broken up into little pea sizes. What we're going to do now is we're going to add half of the water. So we're going to add 6 tablespoons of water. We're going to add 3 tablespoons of water. 6 is the total amount, but we're only adding half right now. Then I just want to mix that in. And with the water in there, we should start to see the dough coming together quite nicely. If you have any really dry parts, try to get it into that you already have the water in. And now we're going to add a tablespoon at a time, the other 3. Because it's possible, depending on how humid it is, you may not need the other full 6. Just add it 1 tablespoon at a time until you get a nice dough. The secret to making a pie crust is you want to work it as little as possible. You also want to make sure that you still have some big butter chunks in this, because that helps make it flaky. It's looking like I am going to need the full 6 tablespoons of water. Let me get that last one added. Okay, you'll notice that dough's coming together. I don't need it to come totally together, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to dump it onto this mat. And I just want to go like this and form my dough together. I just want to push it together. You're going to see chunks of butter still in there. That's good. That's what we want. Once you have your dough all together, you're going to divide it in half. Because this is enough dough crust for 2 pies. So I'm going to put that one aside, and I'm going to bring this one down, and I want to make this into a flat pancake. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it. Just use your bench scraper, get it up off of the mat, stick it on there. And we're just going to cover this and put it in the fridge and let it rest for a half an hour to an hour. We're going to do the same with the other one, and then we'll show you how to roll the crust out and get it ready to bake, because this is a pie crust that has to be pre-baked, because the pie itself is not baked with the filling. It's a cold filling. So we'll be back in a half an hour to an hour when this has had time to chill in the fridge. The pie dough has been in the fridge for about a half an hour to an hour. We're ready now to roll out the dough. We have our dough here. We're going to roll it out on this mat, but we still want to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on it to make sure it doesn't stick. We're then going to take our dough and put it on the mat. Now our goal is to keep it round and to get it to be the size of this pie plate. I'm going to use my rolling pin. I'm going to start at the center and roll out. If it sticks like this, all you need to do is sprinkle, and I like to put a little bit of flour onto my rolling pin. And I'm going to roll out this way, roll out this way. I'm always rolling from the center on out. I then want to turn this 1/3 turn, because I want to make sure that this does not stick. I'm always rolling from the center on out and then turning it. This is getting big enough that I don't really want to turn it anymore, but I still want to make sure it's not sticking. So I'm just using my spatula before I roll it some more, and I'm going to turn the mat. Now, pie crust is very forgiving. Put this here, see if it's about the right size. I'm going to do just a little bit more. What I mean by it being forgiving is when I put it in the pan, if it's got cracks, I can easily mold it together. Now, here's why I like using a mat. What I'm able to do now is I just set my pie tin on there, and then I turn my mat over. And there it comes right out into the pan. Then I'm able to take this and push it down into the pan. And I want to make sure it's completely down into the bottom of the pan and there's no air bubbles there. I also want to make sure it's a little bit bigger than the pie tin there. Once I get this into the pie tin, I'm going to go like this and I'm going to poke holes in the bottom. And I also like to do it up the sides. This helps start the pie so we don't get a bunch of air bubbles. Now the next thing I want to do is I kind of want to fold this crust over a little bit. And I don't want a lot of extra crust, so I'm just kind of folding up like this so that it's up and raised. And then I'm going to come around and cut off any extra that's there, because I don't want that extra. Now different people will flute their pans different ways. I personally like just taking my fork and pressing that down, making sure it goes over the back of the pan. Because sometimes pie crusts do have a tendency to shrink just a little bit. That's one reason we turned it up under, so that there would be some extra. And and then we're just going to go like this, having it go over the edge of the pan. We now have our pie crust made, but it's not quite ready to go in the oven. We need to make sure that the bottom doesn't bubble up and it stays flat on the bottom. To do that, we're going to take this parchment paper and we're just going to tear some parchment paper off. Now you don't have to use parchment paper, you could use wax paper. Either one will work. And we're going to fill the inside of this pie tin with that parchment paper. Then we're going to take these black beans and put them in the pie shell. This is weighting it down so that our pie shell doesn't bubble up. And I want to make sure it's going all the way to the edges. If you want, you can trim this, but to me it's not worth the bother because it's not going to stay in once it's cooked. I will be cooking the pie crust in a 375-degree oven for 10 minutes. So we'll be back when this is cooked. The timer just went off on the oven, so we're going to take it out of the oven now and let it cool. We're going to place it on this cooling rack and let it cool till it's completely cool. When it's completely cool, we'll be ready to add the strawberries and the filling for the strawberries for our strawberry pie. Our pie crust has cooled for about 10-15 minutes. We're ready to now take these beans out, and they are still a little bit warm. And now we're going to let this pie crust completely cool before we put the strawberries in. Now that our pie crust has cooked, we're ready to make the filling for our strawberry pie. We want to make this while the pie crust is cooling. Then we'll stick it all in the fridge to chill when we're completely done. First thing we need to do is make the sauce that goes over the strawberries. What we want to do first is we want to pour our 1 cup water into our pan. We don't have the heat on yet. Then we're going to add the cornstarch. Then I want to whisk this water and cornstarch till the cornstarch is totally dissolved. This cornstarch doesn't like to dissolve in the heat. We want to get it dissolved while the water is still cold. Once we have that cornstarch dissolved, we can add our sugar. And now we can turn the heat on, but we want it on a very low temperature. We just want to keep stirring it until we get this to a boil. When we get it to a boil, the cornstarch, it will become more a clear color. You'll notice I am stirring it constantly because I don't want the cornstarch to lump. And I want to make sure it stays dissolved. I have turned this up to a medium heat now that I know everything's dissolved, and I just want to keep cooking it and stirring it until this comes to a boil and it starts to thicken. It's starting to thicken, and I think it's almost ready to boil. Once we have both those things there, then we will be done with this part. It is thickened quite nicely, and it is starting, as you can see, to boil. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to put in my strawberry gelatin. Now I bought sugar-free gelatin, so this dessert would not have as much sugar. The whole pie has only 1/4 cup sugar. Now we're going to let this sauce cool while we put the strawberries into the pie. I have my pie crust and my cutting board. I also have my strawberries. Now there's several ways you can fill this pie. One thing you can do is you can take the strawberries and just stick them up in the pie like that. And then fill the pie and you'll have whole strawberries. I don't really like to do it that way because I find when you buy the strawberries at the store, they're not all the same size. So what I like to do is once I've cut that top off, I like to slice my strawberries. Once I have them sliced, I just put them in the pie. This way, if they're not all the same size, you won't notice. Now this is a really big strawberry. Let's go ahead. So I'm going to just keep cutting my strawberries until I have my pie crust filled. This is going to take somewhere between 1 and 2 quarts of strawberries. Unless you really want a palette up pie, but I don't really like going higher than the crust. So for me, it takes 1 to 2 quarts of strawberries. I will be back with you when I have all these cut and show you what we do next. You go ahead and cut yours, and then we'll meet back when both of us have our strawberries cut and in the pie. I have my pie all filled with the strawberries. It's filled pretty much up to the top. What I want to do with this is I just did one more stir. Make sure it was not having a film. And then I'm just going to pour this over the strawberries. And I want it to coat all of the strawberries. And try to make sure if there's any strawberries that don't have the coating that you can spread to get coating on all the strawberries. Don't worry about what's underneath because that will be fine. It will get some on it. You just want to make sure all the top layer has sauce on it. And now all we're going to do is stick this into the fridge and let it set up. Since it has the gelatin, it's going to set up pretty firm. And then we'll be ready to eat it. Hang on, I found another spot that doesn't have this on it. You probably want to turn your pie and inspect it and see if there's any strawberries that miss this. All right, now we're ready to put this in the fridge. So we're going to let this set up in the fridge for a couple hours, and then it'll be ready to serve. When I serve it, I usually will dish it up and put some whipped cream on top of each piece. Show you what it looks like once it's set up. Put yours in the fridge too to set up. We're now going to cut the pie and serve it. Here's our pie, all cut and put on the plate. All I need to do now is put some whipped cream on top. Here is our delicious fresh strawberry pie. You saw just how easy this was to make from beginning to end. Make some up today and enjoy it with a friend. This is Nadine with DIY Sweets and our fresh strawberry pie. Enjoy and happy baking.